Greetings, Internet, and welcome to another mildly interesting episode of Real Debate. As always, I'm your host, Kyle. Joining me this week, we have Jon.
Heyo.
And Nate.
Hiyo.
And this is going to be an interesting one because, for one, we're talking about Starship Troopers.
Yes.
Yay! And I'm going to say this now. It's an amazing comedy.
I love this movie when I was growing up.
We've got to see this way too early.
Yeah, that's accurate. I most of it when I was younger went way over my head when I first watched this movie.
I'm pretty sure that we got to see it on the... Didn't it go straight to TV 2 years after? So
That I don't know. Possibly.
The point is, we got to see the super censored version of this at a really young age because it came out in '97, so I would have been 7.
I got that stuff on VHS.
Yeah, I know. I think we did see it on VHS or something.
I don't think so because I don't remember that titty.
I remember some titties. I don't remember all of the titties.
There were some titties in that movie, though.
And some ass.
A lot of ass.
Man ass.
Man. I do like my mayo.
But another thing that'll make this interesting is I did not have time to write a script. I decided to go on nearly a 10-mile walk today.
That is very unheard of you, and what have you done with the Kyle that I know?
So what you're saying is you're using my strategy for doing these videos?
Throw everyone off, yes.
Sweet.
So it's
I
just
like where this is going already.
So it's just different for you.
Well, I mean, I'm going to have to freestyle this, so... Hit up a beat, Nate!
Wow, 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 wow.
I'm not actually creative enough to try to sing this.
Please don't.
I'm sorry, our one fan.
It has been 0 days since we have beatboxed on this recording.
You mean our now 0 fans?
So, couple of things here is, one, we're not actually going to rate either side. This is obviously a parody of Hollywood tactics amongst many other things, so it's really unfair to rate this movie. The other thing is that we're not really criticizing, we're pointing out what the movie is doing and what it might be trying to say. We don't know. We have only watched this once, and let's face it, I'm up way too late.
I mean, we're going to be going into a lot of the film theory and what the author was intending as well. And I mean, we will be going into some of the tactics and comparing this to some other movies as well. I know we talked about doing Ender's Game and comparing the two, kind of how it's a rebuttal. We're trying not to get into the actual writer because...
Or the entire Warhammer franchise is kind of based off of this?
Yeah. Warhammer is definitely based off of this. And we were making comparisons to the Imperium of Man and how, the Terrans or humans in this, act a lot like them.
I love how in anything sci-fi we automatically start calling humans Terrans.
Thank you, Blizzard, for that wonderful contribution to sci-fi.
Thanks for taking all of the little pieces of other things, making a pretty decent story, and rolling with it.
Hey, StarCraft was a great story. Better than decent.
I was not being sarcastic there. See, what you mistook for my sarcasm voice, which is this, is from my normal voice, which is this.
I always assumed you just had sarcasm mode and dad pun mode.
That too. They all sound very similar, so...
So I guess we should probably kick this off with talking about the recruiting process.
I can at least give a synopsis of this.
Sure, if you want.
So, since we're reviewing the whole movie, not just the battles in it, this is going to be a little different. So the war starts off with a meteor hitting Earth, somehow, from the other side of the galaxy, according to the maps.
I bet there were space Italians that did that.
I'm willing to bet at this point that the human government ignored a meteor coming right at them and was using it as justifications for a war.
I would actually agree with that because we see that in the movie that there is a picture of showing where Clandathu is, which is the home world for the bugs.
On the opposite side of the galaxy.
It would take hundreds and thousands and 10,000s maybe even millions of years for that asteroid to get there.
No,
If it was
obviously, the aliens just sent it out long before they even knew humans were a threat, and it just coincidentally crashed into Earth. And the humans just coincidentally also ignored it.
So you're saying the Sky Marshals did this 9/11 times 1,000?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
The defense platform was clearly undergoing maintenance, and everyone was on lunch break because of union mandatory lunch breaks.
I don't think they have unions in the future because it's
don't
all the rugged individualism about it.
I
So
don't think they have unions in the military. That would be the weirdest union ever.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Sir, we think going to war is bad for our health plan.
We will only go to this war if we also get free beer or we go on strike.
We demand Taco Tuesday or we will not invade Normandy.
we'll give you Taco Thursday. How about that?
Heresy.
That or the aliens just, somehow magically figured out how to teleport, asteroids, meteors, meteorites from one planet to the other, but that seems highly unlikely considering they have no technology.
Yeah, they do say that the humans have faster than light travel, but the bugs, they send spores via asteroids to colonize other planets. There's no projection of power whatsoever, so...
Ah, yes. The origination of Scientology.
That explains Clendathu. By the way, my name is John Smith.
Anyways,
You're kind of screwed, John.
Whatever.
the humans proceed to get all their ships in the tightest formation possible so there's no way to dodge anything, and send down landing craft after landing craft without doing any form of reconnaissance on the planet, so naturally they start getting hit by artillery pieces.
Yeah, the lack of reconnaissance was a really bad idea. The one thing I will say is that a spearhead tactic for trying to breach a planet or a beach or whatever you want to freaking call it, an area, to be able to set up a forward operating base is good. And, sometimes, you just got to feed things into the meat grinder until something gets through.
And one of the things that we see in this as well, after Clendathu, is that there is a military change with the leadership that's going on, because they actually clearly state that this was a complete blunder. They didn't think it through at all, and yeah,
they could have brought a lot more heavy armament and artillery and weapons and things like that onto the planet during the initial invasion to make that go a lot more soundly.
Yeah, any bit of reconnaissance, any bit of knowing your enemy, and that's what Sun Tzu's first thing is: know your enemy, know yourself. And they clearly didn't know their enemy, and because of that, they paid dearly for it.
Yeah, and if they had spread out their forces too far, then the enemies could just focus fire. And considering that the aliens control the entirety of the planet, even though apparently they didn't know that because they didn't do any fucking intelligence before they went to the planet.
Even though they're in a quarantine zone, they've been keeping a track of them for a long time.
If they had known there was artillery on the planet, their strategy was pretty sound, although they were kind of going about it pretty slowly.
Yeah, that is something that is brought up at the beginning, is they show the R&D, the research and development, when they're shooting one of the bugs. They're remorseless killers, they don't think at all, and that's something that changes throughout the entire movie, and that's what their initial thought of them is remorseless killers that are just kind of spread among a few planets. Having some bombing runs go through to soften up the defenses as well would have been great before the landing party went down. Also, the grunts...
Or orbital bombardment.
Yeah, or that. They talk about glancing the planets a couple of times, and we see that kind of trope come up in Halo.
It's not like we need this planet for resources.
Right?
Why not just blow it up?
In the words of Futurama, we're attacking this lifeless planet with no resources and holds no strategic importance whatsoever.
Which is a really good parody of the whole concept of this movie.
Yep.
Why are we even here? Because we love war.
I mean, that's pretty much why that they're there. I mean, Rico says that we were joking around saying that like this provides young teenagers the three things that they want: sex, killing, and eating, and they get all of that in the military.
I mean, it does help that those bugs seem to only eat split pea soup and tomato soup. Don't mix the two, though.
That's
It's
why
highly reactive compound.
That's why we see when the bugs are blown up, they spew out green, and that's why it's called Planet Pea. It's for peas.
Pea soup.
That's what they feed on. I mean, obviously.
I just imagine one of those
vitamin P.
That stands for penis. Nothing will come between us.
I just imagined one of those bugs with a chef hat stirring a pot of soup.
Yeah, right. Where do they get the peas from? That's an entire desert planet. It's completely arid.
Well, I mean, we've only seen one section of the planet, so I'll assume that all planets are, Earth-like in the sense that they have, multiple biomes instead of the utterly stupid single biome planets that are somehow inhabitable.
Thanks, Star Wars.
Yeah, I blame Star Wars on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, George Lucas. We love you.
No matter how much we criticize your work.
So wait, so if the planet has multiple biomes, why did they decide to attack in the desert? Isn't that like the worst possible place to invade?
The same reason that we decided to attack a desert.
No! There's no oil over there! Unless the pea soup is oil that comes out of the bugs.
It could be both.
It's both delicious and powers our vehicles, which is why we see the mobile infantry use no vehicles.
Gibberish crabs.
Because they needed that oil.
See, yeah, these are Gibberish crabs' chosen children.
God designed that butthole.
God created that volatile mix that it shoots out.
I feel like this is turning into like a Billy's Maze commercial. Freaking, it slices, it dices, it kills, it murders, it creates pea soup. You can burn it for energy and heat. You can eat it. It's everything you've ever wanted.
It's slap chop.
You can shoot it and beat it like a... Never mind.
Then I can...
For some stupid reason, they also sent camera crews down with the first wave of troopers. They're recording live and broadcasting live to everyone.
They show a couple of people getting, cleaved in half, like the reporter. At the end, they see Johnny Rico getting his leg stabbed and presumably killed. Obviously, he wasn't.
I mean, he was officially KIA, but, I mean...
That means the government doesn't have to pay him for the next 6 months.
There you go. I mean, obviously, the only reason they bring in the camera crews is because GoPros just aren't as exciting as actually having a reporter there doing fake hurricane enactments.
Too soon.
Oops.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the propaganda machine that the Earth government is going, because they're kind of, I won't say fascist or communist, because
they have Neil Patrick Harris dressed as a goddamn Nazi.
They're an imperium.
I would gladly state that this is kinda
not open for debate. It's
Yeah.
pretty obvious.
Yeah, one of the
He
things
even has the hat.
One of the things that we see on Clondathu, especially the troopers just coming out of boot camp, is when they first see the bugs, they are unprepared. And Johnny Rico, saying, "Hey, this is your training. Start to shoot." And we see very disorganized. And after even a few losses, we see the entire force that landed there start to retreat. There was a general retreat call, but it was very quickly turned into a rout.
Well, yeah, because they rolled over their leadership and they broke morale.
Yeah.
Their leadership, to be fair, was probably like 4.
And then the Nids just ran them over and caught up with them.
Zerg rush.
But that's an important thing that we see in this war. Until we get to the veterans, and the veterans are people who've only fought the bugs like once or twice. I mean, besides some of the backstory for Rico's Roughnecks, but we see Rico, Gary Busey Jr. and Dix when they join the Roughnecks. They
You said Roughneck.
Is that supposed to be a joke? Maybe rednecks.
Ooh.
Yes, because we haven't made a non-existent career not offending people.
That's a correct.
Anyway, yeah, we see the lines break pretty quickly, and so the psychology of having a giant bug, getting shot hundreds of times, is pretty demoralizing, and that's one of the aspects that we see of it is see later on when they get to Planet P is they work in fire teams and work to take down a single target, and that works very efficiently for them. So
it's almost like having organized fire teams and actually using crossfire and focus fire increases your chance of killing your targets.
Yeah. None of them take lines on the ridge. None of them do crossfires or.
It's kind of like the whole
firing.
evolution of combat over time, particularly range combat involving bows.
Mm-hmm. But that's where we see the change in the leadership as well as you see a change in the fighting of the people as well. So there's an evolution both on the screen and in the lore as well, which is really nice that they do that.
To be fair, at this point in the future, they should have already known all that stuff.
Yeah, but it's we're always fighting the previous war at the beginning, and so when they learn more when they learn more about the enemy, their tactics will change, and they were not prepared whatsoever for this.
Clearly
as they said.
You are not prepared.
Thanks, Illidan.
So something I'm sure I've probably neglected to bring up at this point is this is the very opening and very end of this movie. Perfect pieces of propaganda in universe.
Oh yeah, that's the whole concept of it. Is military service grants citizenship, so they need to get people engaged in military service in order to make them feel like they're doing better for their country, and therefore we need excuses to fight things in space because we've already conquered and unified all of Earth. So yada yada yada.
Yeah, they actually talk about early on that the democracies had failed, and
that is actually one of my favorite lines in the movie is just casually saying, "And that's why democracy failed."
What's that line from Star Wars?
This is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause.
Yeah.
More like thunderous guns, am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, the veterans take over and whatnot.
So after retreating from Klendathu, they go to what I believe is Planet P.
After Klendathu, they said that the change in doctrine is going to be shifting from taking the head off the snake, or bug in this case, to taking off tertiary planets to try and find some intelligence, because they have a talk show on there that's like, oh, there could be a brain bug, and there's that kind of dopey guy who's like, a brain bug? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I find that offensive. Therefore, we should not use logical tactics in order to defeat the enemy because it makes my feelies hurt.
Yeah, something like that.
Insert opposite political party here.
Yes.
I hate those opposite guys of what I agree with so much.
Right? They are just the worst. Anyway, in the shift in doctrine. Yeah, the shift in doctrine, and the possibility of a brain bug it's shown it's said behind the scenes that the R&D and the psychic people were saying it's like, oh hey, they sent Rico's Roughnecks there specifically to try and get attacked, so then they could lure out a brain bug and capture it.
Nothing says sacrifice like human sacrifice.
I mean, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne,
milk for the cornflakes.
And that's something that Neil Patrick Harris's character says is, it's like, I would do it all over again and send hundreds of people to their death so then we can try and win for the species. And that's like, yeah, that's what the military kind of does. It's they're throwing bodies and trying to find more information about it.
What would it take to get Neil Patrick Harris to perform Springtime for Hitler?
Not much. He loves musicals.
That's also kind of one of the sad points in this movie, is he didn't break into musical anywhere during it.
Mm-hmm. It's afraid of us and Rusev Day.
Thanks, Aiden English and the team up of Neil Patrick. Now I need that in my life.
Things you didn't know you needed.
I mean, I encounter those every day, and everyone around me suffers for when they have to hear it.
Would Rusev do like 4 of the bug's legs around its face? That's the. I'm asking the hard questions here.
Yeah, clearly.
Well, I mean, I think Rusev has to defeat Aiden English because they just broke up, and this is going to date us pretty hard.
Aww.
Yeah, Rusev they broke up for some stupid reason because apparently Rusev still needs to be a heel because he's a goddamn foreigner.
Maybe they should.
Vince McMahon logic.
Maybe they need to give him the citizen's elbow. Because remember, signing up for the military guarantees citizenship.
Like the Romans.
We see a lot of Roman influence on this as well, where it's...
So, anyways, the troopers eventually get to a stronghold that's on the planet for some reason, despite knowing that the bugs burrow, and naturally they burrowed their way underneath and got in.
Well, didn't they were called in on a distress to Whiskey Outpost, which is where most of the iconic scenes happen. And they come into, as John said it while we were watching this, Blood Gulch, where everybody there is napping. Just, remove their legs and...
It must be nap time.
Thanks, Caboose.
But nap time comes before pants time. Wait, they don't have legs. They can't wear pants. Never mind.
Therefore, pants time can't ever exist.
So they came up a little short.
They can no longer get on rides at a carnival.
Aww.
You must be this tall to ride the alien.
It looks like they rode the Scrambler.
Yeah. More like the
brain scrambler.
Oh.
Dustin, if you're watching this, I love you.
Dustin, I know you're not watching this. I'm indifferent to you.
Who's Dustin?
He's my friend who's in a wheelchair, and his mom lost her legs to the
Oh, okay.
Scrambler. So
I believe when I first met him, I called him Legolas.
he's also in a wheelchair.
Kind of like that lieutenant in the movie.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Matt.
Nubs.
We're just terrible, terrible people. Anyway, let's keep going.
If it makes anyone feel better, I don't care what you think.
I do.
They're our potential audience. We can't alienate them. We're not bugs. They're not bugs.
Well, I think we have to alienate them if they're foul Xenos.
Yeah, if they're Xenos, we have to kill them.
Yeah.
Which means we're going about this horribly wrong.
Yeah.
We're making them listen to our propaganda so that when we meet them in real life, we get our bolters out and purge the unclean.
Luring them in. Clever tactic.
Must be heresy.
That's what I was thinking. Does that mean we have to shoot ourselves?
No, because the only way you can legally look at an alien is if you're looking down the...
Scope of a barrel.
Yeah.
You both said blood for the blood, God skull for the skull thrones earlier. That's pretty heretical for me. Heretical. I can words.
Dude, you don't get it. Blood for the Emperor God.
Death for the false emperor. Wait, what?
Is this heresy? Is this how heresy starts? Do you want heresy? Because that's how you get heresy.
I don't know what you're talking about. I love ants.
Whiskey Outpost. So yeah, they were called in for distress, and everybody was sleeping. And then they actually do take care of the tunnel that was there in the background as Lieutenant Ironside. He's like, "Hey, everybody, get up! We're about to be under attack." And
his name's not Lieutenant Ironside. His actor is Michael Ironside.
Well, that was a horrible loss of the filming studio.
Really? He should always just play a character named Ironside no matter what movie he's in?
Pretty much, yeah.
Dear God, it fits him in this.
So one of the things that kind of bugs me from a tactical standpoint, yes, pun intended, is
pun intentional.
I figure at this point, since they know to look for bug tunnels and stuff like that, they get that they dig. Why did they not build subterranean defense bases? Just a thought.
Or
have you ever tried to build a subterranean defense base?
Yeah, I mean, that would not be the hardest thing in the world to do or engineer.
Yeah, but we see with the Hercules
You
beetles.
set up choke points.
We see with the Hercules beetles that they could just, dig their way or break their way or melt their way with caustic acid to get to the surface. So I don't
Build
think...
it on freaking stilts. Make it float. They got goddamn space technology. They have aircraft that can travel across the galaxy. Have orbital defense platforms that just fire down from space. I'm sorry, I'm getting too logical here. My bad.
Yeah. No. This is the best attitude that we want for that, because those are all things that they should have done, but they didn't. Instead, we got this cinematic masterpiece that I loved as a child.
Or I don't know, we could go full Gurren Lagann on this and just have a base underground that spins with giant blades whenever anything is detected getting close to it.
Well, in Starship Troopers 3, they do get into giant mechs and fight a bug that's the size of a planet, so we kind of get halfway there.
Or you could just hit it with a laser beam like an Ender's Game.
Yeah. I think that's actually what they use in the third one. Is they use a Q bomb that pretty much does the same thing as the Ender's Game.
Q as in question for why would we put this in a movie?
Yeah.
There's no drama, but it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see the lieutenant order everybody up to the turrets and start firing down, and they have the high ground, so they have the advantage. And the bugs, their
bugs were all looking like Anakin at that point.
I mean, to be fair, there was a lot more of them than there were people.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of using their bodies as pile up, and they're climbing on top of the bodies in order to get to it.
Actually,
I love that scene.
It's one of the few times I think that it works in a movie, because when they do it with zombies and stuff like that, it looks so stupid. But with bugs, it actually kind of looks pretty cool, because it's actually a tactic that bugs have used in the past or in observation.
Nature. Yeah, and for the most part, the bugs were just there to try and get more people for the brain bug. That's why they had sent out the distress signal, is because the brain bug had the.
So what you're saying is that the bugs were holding back.
A little bit, yeah, because they actually sent the message out because the radio operator had his brain sucked out, and he had sent the message out to other people, so then they can gain more intelligence.
Bad tactics on the bugs' part.
They didn't need everybody.
But I would like to point out, the fleet somehow makes the same mistake of flying so close together that when artillery is firing at them, they can't dodge and are just getting pounded by it.
The first time I could forgive. The second time, no way.
Yeah. I mean, I would like...
The first time I couldn't forgive.
Target.
They were firing through a section of space, but however, one of the things that they can do with dropships is... launch them on the other side of the planet, have them come in through orbit, and land there. Sure, it's going to take, an extra 10 minutes to get there, but...
Not even.
Yeah, not even that, because they're in orbit, they can go against the rotation of the planet, and then get to their location faster and safer. Yeah. And we do see some bombing runs as well before...
we see one bombing run.
Yeah,
on the second invasion.
Yeah,
they should have been doing that all the time. I'll agree with that.
And they do actually talk about Rico when they're retreating from Whiskey Outpost. He's like, hey, blast the planet. There's a shit ton of bugs there. And that's when the captain says, oh, fleet orders, they have a plan for Plan P. So they knew that something was there, and they were going to use that as an opportunity to capture a brain bug and learn more about their opponents. And that's where sacrificing individual lives for the greater good of humanity.
So, John... what was your takeaway from this movie? What Hollywood tactic did you take away as the big no-no?
I would say the big no-no from this, ultimately, I think in the era of technology that we're speaking of with superior, overwhelming force, understanding the enemy and with what information they already have, the whole concept of trying to capture the brain bug in the first place, in my opinion, seemed kind of pointless, considering that they could just overwhelmingly annihilate their enemy with the weapons that they have. if they were willing to devote enough money to it. The only logical conclusion that I can come to is that human lives are cheaper than weapons and bombs, so they're just going to sacrifice people to save money.
Hence the Imperium.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you bring that up as well, because something we see in Ender's Game as well is there's there's a disconnect of communication between the two, and that's where this kind of gets into. They're trying to form a communication network so that they can try and reason with them and figure out what they're about, because they're not all just about ending the war with one strike.
So is this a war or like killing the buffalo?
It's a war but they're trying to make it just killing buffalo.
Yeah, that's where we talked about at the beginning, where it's the justification of the war, and because this was 9/11 times 1,000, with 13 plus million people dead in Buenos Aires, we see a very charged up military and charged up populace that's willing to go to war and annihilate a creature in response to this happening. Afghanistan. Look, you weren't going to bring it up. I was going to. We see a justification for the war and populace that's willing to go to war, and that's very important for it. And
Kyle, what's your takeaway from the movie?
Don't use football tactics in a war.
Well, I mean, they did play football in the beginning of the movie.
So they had to make it into a Chekhov's gun.
No, that was the knife that they used to cut off.
You can have multiple Chekhov guns.
I like Chekhov's knife.
Nice to meet you. I guess my other takeaway from this movie is, of course, spread your goddamn ships out.
It's space. There's a lot of it.
No, you do not. You have to spearhead.
No, that's fine for having a spear that comes from multiple directions. It's just when you're in space, you have lots of room to maneuver and
put sacrificial shields in front of your ships. That's rule number 1. They didn't do that, so obviously they fail on that point. But
thanks, Zap Brannigan.
What? It works in a 3-dimensional space. That's what you do. Especially when you're attacking a planet.
How does it work when which way is in front?
If you just breach from multiple sides, then you're just opening up your ships to being targeted from a greater variety of planet defense systems.
You can have the nearest ship be 6 million miles from you and still be converging on the same location.
Yeah, that's fine, but when you're close to entering the atmosphere, you want to have them grouped up.
You can still have 10,000 miles between ships and still be good.
Yeah,
space is big,
and having having the atmosphere. What they could have done is have deflector shields on the front and then deploy out the back with the transport troops.
If your enemy can't aim for shit, sure, your tactic works great, but if they have good aim, then no, you don't want to do that.
Which I stand by, they don't have good aim.
I mean, you don't need to be,
primary objective, kill those bugs first.
You don't need to be, 50 to 500 meters where something close or something, just hitting the ship is going to have it hit another ship.
You don't want collateral damage necessarily, but at the same point, those ships can survive re-entry, so collateral damage isn't going to do much to them.
Tell you what, go outside and go look at the various satellites orbiting the place. Now use your giant thorax cannon to start shooting at them. You'll eventually hit something.
Yeah, that's because the entire planet is surrounded by satellites, and, including, beyond that, a satellite graveyard.
Also, the government...
This is not that planet.
Also, the government won't give Jon that authority.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's illegal, but... I can't use my ass cannon on satellites. I'm sorry.
Soon!
Okay, Nate, did you have a takeaway?
Yeah, don't kill your enemy's parents. Because, as we see very often... Batman, Superman, you kill the parents, then you get some crazy guy like Rico come in and blow everything up.
Also, don't kill their aunts, otherwise we'll get Spider-Man.
Yeah, you mean uncle?
I mean, depends on which iteration of the story we're talking about here. His aunts died too.
True.
So, what do you think? Are we blithering idiots? Did we miss something? How awesome is this movie? Seriously, it's great.
It's so awesome. I love it.
Let us know in the comments below.